There we go. All right, so a little button should pop up saying that we're recording this. I'm recording this so that we can post it on our city website later, so the people who were not able to join us can go through and watch and listen to what we're talking about. So thanks for your patience with that. My name is Kathy Baker Eclipse, and I want to thank you all for coming tonight and making time for us. I know it's really hard when we had suffered through such a really tough weekend, and now the weather's beautiful, but we're inside. I hope some of you are at least outside. Can we go to the next slide, Elise? I want to introduce, I'm Kathy Baker Eclipse. I'm the project manager from Boston Parks Department. And I want to introduce Brandon Kunkel and Elise Fluell. They're the designers from Weston and Sampson. I also want to note that Ryan Woods, the commissioner, is with us today. He probably is not happy that I just called him out, but he's here in the audience with us today. I know a lot of you know him. And if there are any other elected officials in the audience that want to be recognized, just raise your hand and I'll acknowledge that. Or representatives from elected officials' offices. Okay. Fleming Brothers is the contractor that is on site this week and will be on site for the next year or so. So that's another key player in our project team. So Julie from Councilor Baker's office is also here. So thank you for coming, Julie.
Yes, of course. Sorry, I couldn't raise my hand, so I just wanted to make sure you guys knew I was here. I
No
think
problem.
that the councilor might be joining us as well, but I will be here for the duration. Thank you.
Right. Excuse me as I admit some additional people. So I want to go through the project schedule briefly. I do acknowledge that it has been a long time since we've engaged with the community, and there should have been check-ins since 2018 when we last came to the community. This project is an extremely complex project. It is probably the most complex project that I've worked on in my 13+ years with the city. We've been coordinating with DCR, with all the utilities, the Boston Water and Sewer, Eversource, Verizon, Comcast. There are overhead wires in the park that we needed to address, and that took some time to work through. We've been coordinating with other city agencies. There are heaps of legal issues that we've been working through. We needed to also make sure that we understood the access issues to the yacht club and to Malibu Beach. Of course, sea level rise and high water is an influence on this park design. And because of its proximity to the water, we also need to go through the Conservation Commission. So this is easily, like I said, this is easily the most complex project that I've worked on in my years with the city. Additionally, the Garvey construction, which was relatively more straightforward, was overlapped with this design process. And we had communicated with the athletic leagues that both these projects, major athletic facilities, were under design, and we did not want to take them both offline at the same time. So that Garvey pushed forward, and then McConnell, because of those complex legal issues, lagged after the construction of Garvey was complete. So now that that is complete, we're moving forward with the construction of McConnell. So if we can go to the next slide. There were some other issues over the weekend that I do just want to address. There was some concern about the athletic lights that were on the field got vandalized over the weekend. It was just the lenses that were broken. It was not the bulbs which contain the metals. Those were all intact. And those metals do require proper procedures to dispose of them, which we are following. So I've been in contact with various governmental agencies, and we're aware of the process that we need to go through, and we're going through that. We're working through that process currently. I also want to acknowledge that I understand that the parking is a hardship, but a major component of this work is to raise the grade of the parking lot in order to provide sea level rise protection to the community. So unfortunately, there's no way to raise the grade of the parking lot without a closure of that parking lot. We do not typically have a project that is bisected through with public access. We typically fence off the entire park, give it all over to the contractor, and then have them work on it. But this is an anomaly because of that existing access, which we have no control over. So this is a diagram of the construction phasing. We have received a schedule from the contractor where he is planning on prioritizing the work on the east side of the park from the bungalow east along Bayside Street and along Southview Street. He's going to be working on that work in the next 4 to 6 weeks in order to provide an accessible access to Savin Hill Beach for the majority of construction. But unfortunately, that construction work does take time to construct. So as soon as possible, he will be opening that side of the works so that people can pass through. It's not going to be finished, but it will be, the paths will be safe and accessible, but there will still be some planting and some seeding and other finish work that will linger, but the paths will be safe and accessible for people to access the beach from Southview and from Bayside Street. And then he will be working on the rest of the site, concentrating on the utilities, underground work, getting that underway, and then working between the ball field and the parking lot. Okay, I think that, so Brandon, if I'm going to hand it over to you and Elise to give a brief overview of the plan before we open it up for general Q&A.
Sure, thanks, Kathy. Elise, if you want to flip one more slide. So this is our proposed design, and what you'll see is actually it's a fairly similar layout to what is out there currently, in the fact that the fields will remain on the left-hand side of the screen, or where they are today. The parking lot will be in the middle. The playground was generally where it is located today. And the side to the right side of the screen, or the hillside area, while we are doing some accessible paths through that area, remains generally untouched for the most part, other than making accessible paths and the grading associated with that area. The proposed plan calls for a natural turf or natural grass softball field, a natural grass Little League field, and a rectangular U10 field in between that will overlap the outfield of the softball field in the general space, open space in between the softball and the Little League field. Down in the lower left corner of the screen, or up against the yacht club property, is the proposed synthetic turf challenger field. Now, what makes this unique, or if you're not familiar with what a challenger field is, it is a field that is slightly smaller than a Little League field, fully enclosed with fencing, and 100% accessible for multiple disabilities, not just, it's meant for being universally accessible for all children. It is synthetic turf because that is an accessible material. Also, this particular turf system has no infill. The safety protection is actually below the turf pad itself. In that padding system that protects from injuries is the same material that goes in the rubber playground surfacing. The parking lot area in the middle, as Kathy mentioned, that's sort of the key component to our resilient design. And we're raising that approximately anywhere between 3 and 6 feet, depending on where you sit within the parking lot area currently. But that's really intended to be a protection barrier for both Playstead and the Denny Street corridors coming down into the park. The athletic fields themselves will predominantly stay at the same elevation and are intended to be inundated with sea rise over time. But that's why we went with the natural grass versus a synthetic turf. One, natural grass is a nice material to play on, in my opinion, but it also doesn't have the infill that synthetic turf fields typically have. So it will withstand a certain amount of flooding and inundation in the future. The playground is 100% universal design, accessible, rubber safety surfacing throughout. There is a plaza space that is right off the parking lot adjacent to the playground area. There will be benches, chairs, seating along the plaza area that overlook the Little League field. And that's also the existing, plus or minus, same location of the existing yacht club access, and that will remain the yacht club access as well. And then, as I noted, along the right side, up on the hill area underneath the trees, we'll be putting in accessible, ADA accessible walkways throughout that area, as well as supplementing with new trees. Now, we are, as part of the resiliency measures in particular, we are having to remove approximately 32 trees around the site. We are proposing 56 new trees in their place. So you'll actually have a net gain of 14 new trees in the future. And we are matching the existing parking that is within the parking lot today. So there will be no loss of parking once this is completed, but it will be resilient to flooding and out of the sea rise elevations into the future. So Elise, if you could flip over to the next slide. This is enlargement of the playground area. Some of the playground equipment, it's a mix of both 2 to 5-year-old use as well as 5 to 12-year-old use. So there's a mix of equipment, which we'll show in just a minute, but this is generally what is within the program and will be within the playground area. Next slide. So this is some of the structures, and you'll see that there's a accessible carousel for those children that require it. A 2 to 5 play structure, a 5 to 12 play structure with ramps, slides, climbing ropes, steps, ladders, balance beams, stepping pods, play panels. Elise, next slide. And then there's a series of a roller table, which is meant for kids to build their upper body strength, musical instruments. It's really, these pieces of equipment play to the senses. So there's touch, sound, feeling, swinging. So you get the sensation of the wind blowing against your face and skin. And then the musical instruments for the hearing, of course. Next slide. And then there's some smaller, I don't want to call them secluded, but places where kids, particularly on the spectrum of autism, are able to get out of the fray a bit. There's sensory panels or textures within this cozy cocoon, but it's meant to provide a space where they feel safe and out of the loud noises and possibly interaction with other children if that is warranted. And then there will be a group swing that encourages kids to hang out and play together, but it's also good for those with disabilities that aren't able to use a swing themselves. Next slide. And then, as I noted earlier, we are taking out 32 trees, but we're replacing a lot of trees that are in kind that are already existing. So the maples, the sycamore, we will be doing some screening with the cedars. Next slide. Oaks, white oaks, and scarlet oaks, which all like to be inundated over in the future, wet feet, and will do well with regards to resiliency. Next slide. Or is that it? So I guess that is the proposed plan in a big nutshell.
Big broad strokes, yeah.
Yeah, so if you know, there are specific questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, there's some in the chat, but I'll go through and I'll help to moderate that. But I do want to go through some group agreements for a fair and productive conversation. We found that these are helpful in kind of table setting what the expectations are around everyone's thoughts as we share them. We want to be respectful and use respectful language. Share the airtime. So I'm going to prioritize people who have only spoken once. I will deprioritize those as they repeat in favor of people who have not spoken yet. If you disagree, consider asking a question rather than arguing to prove your point. That being said, it is okay to disagree, but don't personalize it. Focus on the idea, not the person. Speak up if the process doesn't seem fair. If you talk about people who are not here, do not use their names. Speak for yourself and not the group that you may be feeling that you're representing. We all share responsibility for making the group productive, so let's all listen to each other. So Brandon, there were a couple of questions in the chat while you were presenting about the material of the ball fields. Could you recap the material for each of those fields and why we chose to go with those?
Sure. So the softball field, Little League field, and rectangular field will all be your traditional natural grass fields. The Challenger field, which is in the lower left corner of the slide, is a synthetic turf field. That it was selected primarily for ADA accessibility reasons, as well as its resilient measures when it comes to the potential of inundation in the future. There is no infill material on that Challenger field. It is a synthetic turf carpet. The padding and protection that is normally a infill material, whether or not it's rubber or a natural organic infill material, is actually below the carpet in a pad system. So it will not move should it get flooded. It's intended to get flooded. And so all the protection that is provided and the accessibility is provided is below the actual carpet itself, much like the pad that you have in your home underneath your carpet. So very similar system to that. But as I noted, the Little League fields, the softball field, and the rectangular field are all natural grass. There'll be a sandy root zone mix, which is well draining. And these are really a high performing, very engineered athletic field mix that are intended to take inundation from water in the future. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah. There was another question about, I'm going to try to organize these a bit by topic, but forgive me as I try to go through all of them. So yeah, there was somebody, S. Daniel, there was a comment, you wanted to make a comment about the fields. You can unmute yourself, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me right now?
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to make a comment about the softball field. A couple of things. I noticed that there's a multi-purpose field that kind of intrudes on this. This is a larger issue about equity for the softball program my daughters play. In the ADSL softball, we don't have great facilities, while some of the other leagues, Little League and some of the others, continue to have good facilities. I'd like to see the multi-purpose field moved away from our outfield and a turf field there. We already have a football league at Walsh that plays sometimes on our outfield. Sometimes we have to practice with them playing. They're adults. Some kids have been run over. I worry that that will happen again here. We just want a full softball field, a turf field, something nice for the girls, because they don't have it now. And this is a good opportunity for that, in my opinion.
So yeah, it comes down to permitting, what we can permit. So it's a flexible field that we can permit it for girls softball or women's softball and or soccer, and it comes down to field use and demand. There's a 43-foot distance from the outfield to the pitcher's mound or the pitching rubber. So it is a women's length pitching distance, which I think was one of the questions that came up. And it will be a flat mound for softball with a skinned infield and no rise to the mound. So there were some other questions about, I think those were the questions about the ball field. If people want to, you could may be able to unmute yourself if I'm missing a question about the ball field. But why don't we move on to, there was a question about, are you rebuilding the end of Plaisted and Denny? So yes, the Plaisted and Denny will be connected by, it will look like a roadway and be separated from the parking area so that there is always a clear route of travel for emergency access from Plaisted to Denny. So I'm sorry to see so many older trees getting cut down. How many trees are there before construction and how many total after construction? So I don't know that we have a count of exactly how many there are pre-construction and post-construction, but I know we are keeping several of the existing mature trees. And Brandon, you want to go through those numbers one more time?
Sure. And I can provide Kathy with the exact count of existing trees to remain. I don't have that off the top of my head. I apologize. I do know we are looking to take 32 trees down. That is primarily mostly related to the resilient measures that we're putting in place, as well as some accessibility routes. But we are replacing them with 56 3.5 minimum inch caliper trees, which are a good sized tree. I understand that it's hard to justify taking down so many trees. Trust me, it pains me many times because these are larger trees. But I think if you think about the resilience aspects and the grade change, I hope that there is a common ground that can be achieved. But we are adding approximately 8 plus another 16, so 24 additional new trees above what is being removed.
Right. So, and that is the minimum. I think we're going to keep looking for additional pockets of new trees that we can plant. The new trees, I think we talk about the size of the trees that we're going to be planting. I know that there is one of the reasons that we want to keep existing trees to the greatest extent possible, besides just generally really admiring the benefits that trees have in our communities, is that we are aware that you cannot replace a mature tree. There are times that that a tree is at the end of its useful life and we might take it down before it might take itself down, and that's because of particular structural issues that are going to be affecting the new material that we're putting in. We have the opportunity with a capital construction project to plan for that replacement so that it makes sense with the rest of it. We can grind the stumps down. We can plan for the next generation of trees. Brandon, do you want to talk about the size of the trees for a second? I just talked right over you.
No, that's fine, Kathy. I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, like I said, while we really try to protect as many trees as possible, there are a few trees that are out there that we're monitoring throughout construction. There's a one in particular that is showing signs of stress before we even got on site. It actually has a big, large fissure down the middle of it. And so like Kathy mentioned, you know, the life expectancy on a tree like that that's already damaged is probably another 5 years. So while we have that opportunity, we would like to replace that tree while we're already under construction, and it, you know, is able to be replaced in a manner that won't cause damage to the final design in the future, or falls and hurts someone, most importantly.
Yeah. So the watering plan and the guarantee, can you speak a little to that?
I'm sorry, say that one more time, Kathy?
Watering the existing trees, the maintenance and establishment, and the warranty period for the newly planted trees.
Sure. So the contractor is obligated to water and maintain the existing trees that are on site while he's on site. Essentially, he owns, lack of a better way of describing it, he owns that site, and he has to ensure everything that is to remain has to be protected and has to survive. Otherwise, he owns replacing that in kind. And so it's in his best interest to make sure that they live. So he will be watering them. He's obligated to water them and make sure they survive. And then there is typically at least a 1-year warranty period. I don't exactly recall what we own in this specific contract, but I can follow up. But he owns at least protecting those trees for at least the first year. This one might even be 2 years. I don't recall off the top of my head, but I'll follow up with Kathy. And that's fairly robust for a project like this when it comes to warranty and maintenance on a new park.
Okay, I think those were the major tree issues that that I saw. Can we talk a little about the playground? There are some questions about the rubber surface in the play area. I think the heat is one issue as well. So if we can talk a bit about how we are mitigating heat in the playground.
Mm-hmm.
And I will keep looking for additional playground questions.
Sure. So the playground surfacing.
You want to pull up the site plan, maybe?
Yeah, if that's possible. Elise, are you able to get us back to the playground? Maybe the enlargement, yeah. So as I noted, this is 100% universally accessible playground. So there's not necessarily a handicapped accessible route to get to certain pieces of play equipment. It's intended that every child is able to use every piece of equipment without even thinking about which direction to travel. And that's partially why the rubber surfacing was selected. The traditional wood fiber mulch, in all reality, is not considered, while it is an accessible surface by certain code standards. Technically, as soon as it shifts even a 1/4 of an inch or a 1/2 an inch by kicking it or wear and tear, it's technically out of compliance. As well as the maintenance on wood chips is much more intensive than the rubber surfacing. The temperature on the rubber surfacing can be mitigated by the colors that we select. We have not selected the colors. The colors you see here in the graphic are only for illustrative purposes only, but we can mitigate the colors, the temperatures as best we can through the color selection. So we can pick lighter colors, colors that won't absorb the heat or are more reflective of heat. You can see here there's we're replacing the darker green trees are our new trees. The grayed out or larger darker green trees are existing trees that are to remain. So we believe that there will be quite a bit of shade in the relatively near future to help also mitigate the heat. So I hope that puts a little bit of reassurance on some folks. We totally understand urban heat island is definitely a major issue. That's why we are providing cantilevered shaded dugouts at the softball field, Little League field, and the Challenger field. So, we want to protect the kids as best we can.
So there was also a question about the playground budget for repairs and ongoing maintenance, and that the budget for that comes out of the park's operating budget. So if there are repairs that need to be done, often a constituent will put it into the 311 queue, and then we will address it that way. So that is all absorbed by the park's operating budget. Frank Baker has his hand up, so I will let him unmute himself. You can go ahead and you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hey, Kathy, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I should have asked this question when we were on the park and the Little League space. So the in the back corner, the girls softball diamond, that can't be used as Little League also, because I think with the one diamond for Little League, I think they might be tight down there.
So this is the Little League field is going to be the only official Little League field in Dorchester. There's no other fields that are strictly Little League. They all have, this is going to have the outfield fence. It's going to have a raised mound. It's going to have a grass infield. So it's going to be the home of Little League in Dorchester. There are, it can be used for practices and things, but it's not going to have that raised mound. It's not going to have, and it's going to have a completely skinned infield, that rear field back by I-93. It's going to have a skinned infield. So it's going to be different. It can certainly be used for practices and things. So this would be kind of the premier. You could host tournaments here, tournament game.
Not with just one field. I don't think you'll be able to host tournaments there. Is maybe what I'm getting at. If that's not if you don't have a mound on that backspace, and like I would like to hear from anybody in the Little League that's here what their thoughts are, and also where do, and I saw Kevin on there. Where do the, not to get off topic, but where do the girls play softball now? The ADSL, where do they play softball now? I know for years we've been looking around for fields for them, but I thought they landed between Hemi and there was one other field I thought they were playing at, Ventura or Victory.
I think they are at Hemi and maybe Victory. I'm not positive.
Hi, I'm actually part of ADSL. Hi, Counselor Baker.
How are you, Stephanie?
Good. So I'm supposed to be coaching tonight at Walsh, which is where we play on Tuesdays for the minor leagues, but it gets destroyed every time it rains, and someone decided to drive a dirt bike all over it. So we had to cancel tonight's game. And then there's nowhere else to play. We go to the TUI on Saturday, and it's literally game after game after game. So we can't even run practices. So having a designated space would make such a huge difference for girls.
And Stephanie, all girls down at TUI?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's just something that I think is going to be out there and going to come back up. So, I was just kind of curious around it. And if you could, Kathy, my other thing that I wanted to, and you're probably going to get in, was the amphitheater seating down by the. Okay, we can just get into that next. Thank you. And and as far as the fields, it's probably going to be an ongoing thing, but I'll be back in touch.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Brandon, can you and Elise speak to a little bit to the amphitheater seating area that's near Denny Street, between Denny and Bayview?
Sure. Elise, I don't know if you're able to zoom in a bit or maybe circle the amphitheater seating. And really, I don't want to belittle it at all, because I think it'll be amazing views and a great place to sit. But really, it's just a series of granite block seat walls that are going to be set into the hillside. A couple of rows terraced to allow for people to sit and hang out and look out towards the water. There will be a place to sort of, hold small events and congregate, but it's not a very large space. It was intended to be more subtle and nestled into the hillside versus making a formal space. If that's a better way to describe it.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh yeah, this is Kevin. Frank Baker. Just asking a question. I wasn't able to unmute myself, but I was able to do it. Ms. Goldberg expressed, or actually Stephanie O'Shea expressed. I'm not sure if Stephanie O'Shea or Ms. Goldberg expressed exactly our feelings in the softball league. We're pushing. Eventually, be pushing like 300 girls, and beautiful night like tonight. We weren't able to play our games at Walsh because it was still wet from the rain on Saturday. I just went over and watched my daughter pitch for Boston Latin School, and they were playing over Carter Field, which Northeastern takes care of, and the rain's not even an issue. So we got to get to the point where the girls' softball in Dorchester doesn't have rainouts 3 days after it rains. So that's why we were hoping to have a turf field dedicated to girls' softball down here. I'm all for the Challenger Field, and the Little League field down there is great. I think those are all great ideas. But I think as Stephanie O'Shea and Ms. Goldberg said, as well as Daniel said earlier in the call, I think we need to have a field dedicated to girls softball down here too.
I do just want to clarify that Garvey is not Little League. It is Senior League. It's men's baseball. It's a 90-foot baseball. That was what was here at McConnell and has been removed in favor of the youth baseball. So thank you for that. Brandon, if you can highlight the evergreen trees at I-93 and
Sure.
the intention for those around sound mitigation and pollutant mitigation.
You bet. So Elise is running her scroll along the right-hand side. And basically it's intended to, once they become mature and a solid evergreen wall, full-size grown, and the variety we're planting grow relatively quickly and rapidly and are very durable, pending deer. So as long as deer aren't an issue, we should be okay. But it's intended to mitigate sound from I-93 so you don't hear the hum, but it's also intended to mitigate, headlights coming down from 93 that might serve as a distraction during a softball or Little League game. So that's the intention of the evergreens along 93.
Okay. Can you speak a little about trees in the plaza and why there are none?
Sure. So it's really a combination of, and this is one of the areas where we're going to monitor, and as the construction budget, plays out with potential of unknowns that might be uncovered. We are obligated to stick to a budget, but it's intended to, because it's also serving as the throughway for the yacht club. We're sort of limited to where we can put trees, but there is some seating on the sides. And then we are going to look to see if we can include a few trees within that plaza. But I totally understand the concern. And so that's something we can take a look at.
Yeah, I think that is one that we are open to revisiting. And I think, frankly, the amphitheater seating, I do understand the attractive nuisance that does create. So I think that is something that we're also open to revisiting. But the contractor wants an answer on that pretty shortly from us. So another question was about the trees and why we are not able to save them in order to achieve our goals with sea level rise. The comment was, why don't we see them as a constraint instead of removing them, working around them? And in some cases, it is not possible for us to design to meet our goals in other ways without sacrificing some of the trees.
Correct.
I may have answered the question.
No,
there.
that's correct, Kathy. So as I noted, we are raising this parking lot, and I guess if I'm able to take control, or Elise, if you could sort of outline our protective measures along the edge of the parking lot and sort of our critical elevation on those edges. So that right now is approximately elevation 16 plus or minus. We're going to be raising that up to about 19.5. So we're raising that parking lot about 3.5 feet. So just by nature of having to tie back into existing grades and grade that out, you can imagine that a lot of the tree roots or trunks would be below that elevation. And so they would ultimately starve or die if we were to keep them in their current locations. And then we are transitioning down to the Harbor Walk elevation, which we don't own the Harbor Walk, DCR, that's a DCR property. So just because we're raising the parking lot, we are having to transition along that edge. So that's why many of those trees, unfortunately, have to come out as well. We are replacing them as best we can and where it makes sense to do so. But by nature of grading and topography, that's why many of the trees, unfortunately, have to come out.
There were a few comments about rats in the area, and that is something that we've been in correspondence with ISD about, and are going to be talking to the contractor about tomorrow morning. So that will be addressed. So we'll be monitoring that throughout construction. There was also some comments about the contractor parking in the neighborhood and the speed of contractor vehicles on the street. And these are all comments that I will take back to our contractor, and we'll
yeah. And Kathy, that was my comment. So I live at 24 Denny, and I'm really just concerned about safety right now, because it seems like the fences went up really quickly, and it's like now we all just expect everything to be fine, because like the way the dump trucks were moving on Denny Street today is not cool. And especially before this construction, and I'm really glad that you guys are recording this, because even before this started, we have been trying to get speed bumps on Denny Street, and now we don't have speed bumps, and now we're increasing the size of the vehicles that are using Denny. Today was insane how fast they're going.
Yeah, so
and I just kind of want to know who's in charge of safety at the construction site, and like what measures were put in place to keep residents safe right now with the ongoing construction.
Right. So the site is controlled by Fleming Brothers. They're the general contractor of the site, and we're in constant and continual communication with them. I text them several times a day, asking one question.
Like, what are people doing? Because right now there doesn't seem like there's anything about safety down there.
Right. So they have a safety plan, but we will review it in depth again. And
but we need something like right now. This is like ongoing right now. We live there right now. Like,
right.
This should have been in place before this started happening.
We are meeting with them tomorrow morning. So all of these things will be the first things that we talk about tomorrow morning. So that we will reiterate all of what we're hearing tonight. We will reiterate it tomorrow morning, and we will continue to be continuing to be checking in with him and making sure that he's aware that he is working in a residential neighborhood, and that is not safe. This is an anomaly. We don't typically have pedestrians and other cars going through a construction site that is bisected like this. So we're all trying to figure out the best way of—
With all due respect though, Kathy, like, shouldn't that have been figured out beforehand? Because right now, like, there is nowhere to walk. And if you expect people are just gonna stop walking, then that's crazy. Because right now people are just going through the only road to get to the yacht club. And like, it's a mess. Like it is like, I just don't know how you guys are getting away with just having that set up and just having us have to deal with it now.
Okay. So we will work out something more formal, whether it's we need to move it.
But shouldn't there already be something formal? Like, I'm just asking for safety at the site. Like, you guys don't even have signs or anything. Like, people don't even know where to walk.
The signs are up, and we will continue that conversation with the contractor.
Could you just, what signs are up?
There are the Building a Better Boston, the Coming Soon sign. We need to add more explicit safe pedestrian access signs, and that's something that we can
safety signs. There are none.
Right. So that is item number 1 for tomorrow morning.
But Kathy, don't you see that maybe that should have been item 1 before this started happening?
Yes, I understand. Yes, but I
like, I don't understand. I don't know how you're telling me that you understand that there's no safety signs or any sort of protocols in place right now when we're all living there. Like, this is an active construction site, and there are minimal safety concerns right now. There are no signs. People don't know where to walk. Cars are just kind of coming in and out, weaving. The dump trucks are flying up the road. The construction site is not completely locked down either. If people go over by the softball field, they can just walk through that gate and get on the baseball field. Like, I don't know why I am bringing this up to the people that are running this project.
we will talk about it the first thing tomorrow morning. I can't shut down the project right now because he's gone for the day. So first thing tomorrow morning is the best I can do.
Well, that I don't know if that's good enough. If we're all I'm talking about is safety.
I
That is it.
understand.
And you agree that no safety measures have been put in place at all for this project?
Inadequate safety measures have been installed to date, and we will work to improve.
And just to be clear, even when there's inadequate safety features, a construction project must continue.
If the site becomes unsafe, we will.
It's unsafe now. It is unsafe now.
I think, there would be the discussion of having to temporarily.
I mean,
close
look in the
project.
chat. I'm not the only one saying
I
this.
am taking note of the chat, and it is being recorded. So I will relay all of these concerns relating to safety, and we will do better. All right. So regarding the street sweeping, I'm working with Pat Fandel in the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services to try to see if there's some kind of relief that we can work out. So that is pending, and hopefully we can have an answer to that quickly. There was also a question about moving the fence to allow access to the shower, which I think is something that we can tweak with the contractor as well. There were some questions about the timeline for construction. So I want to revisit that for people who may have joined us late. Timeline for construction, we expect construction to take about a year. The earthwork and utility work is going to be happening first. But Elise, could you bring up the previous slide, the one with the phasing? So to the east of that, to the right side of that arrow is area that the contractor is going to be working on in the next 4 to 6 weeks in order to have a safe route of travel from Bayside Street and from Southview Street, and have that be an accessible route to the Harbor Walk for pedestrians. There will still be vehicular traffic moving through the existing pathway, roadway from Plaisted to the Yacht Club, because we cannot discontinue access through the summer. And like I said, construction is expected to take about a year. So the trees are the first thing that are coming down, and I think we are almost through tree removals. I think there may be some more this week, and as we make a decision on that one remaining tree that looks like it has some structural damage, so that may be coming down in the next week or two. So circling back on the safety, we do not require police details on public park construction sites. The police details are only required in public ways, and which none of the work to date has been done in public ways. So Meg, if you're welcome to unmute yourself.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I was coming from another meeting, so maybe you have identified, but could you specify on the plan which additional trees you are taking out and why?
Sure.
So let's go to the plan. Yeah.
So Elise, if you can circle the tree down in the lower right corner, that one right there. So that tree has some structural damage to it. There's a large crack down the center of the trunk, starting from the main leader all the way down to the ground. It does have a canopy to it, but we believe that it's, health is compromised and that it most
I'm
likely.
sorry, are you pointing to it? Because I can't see which one you're talking
Yeah, so my colleague who is controlling the presentation is circling the tree on the plan. It's in the lower left corner. Can you see her cursor?
I can see it. And this is, of course, was this promenade of trees, which you've started to take out. The ones, if you're walking along, okay, so you're taking that one out. I believe it's already out, isn't it? Seems like a number of those trees right there have been removed.
The ones along the Yacht Club access drive may have been taken out, but I spoke with the contractor specifically on Friday about this tree, and he was not taking it out at that time.
Okay.
We're gonna monitor the health and reevaluate it.
And the canopy, the trees along the walkway, let's just call it that, that as you see kind of make a lovely little walkway there.
Yes.
Why were those taken out?
Because we are changing the grade in that area about 18 inches. So those trees would be basically encompassed with dirt and soil. And so their root structures would end up dying over time anyway.
And the tree, the sycamore, the large sycamore that appeared to have no ants in it from the slice of the trunk, why was that taken out? That had very mature canopy and.
For the same reason, because of the topography change that we're proposing.
And that's it. So when you had this meeting during the pandemic, people understood you're getting this kind of amphitheater thing we're creating. And so you're going to lose these very mature sycamore trees. Are more of the sycamore trees coming out?
No, the sycamore, there was one sycamore tree and one sycamore tree stump. So that was being removed. One full-size sycamore tree. The other one was a stump that was in there.
I think if people knew about it, it would have been like the trees on Milnea Cast. People would have saved that tree.
The amphitheater seating is not related to the tree removal in any way.
So why is that? Why did that tree come down?
Because of the parking lot grading.
So it was for so the design put the parking over the maintaining this gorgeous tree. It was pretty heartbreaking.
It was the design of the parking lot that was driven by protecting the need to protect, or the desire to protect the neighbors from the increasing risk of flooding. I don't know if you remember in 2018, those major storms that we had that winter early in the year, there was several feet of water in the parking lot. So we raised the parking lot to provide water, to provide a cutoff to that water so that it cannot get to the neighbors on Denny and Plaisted that were seeing quite a bit of water in their basements.
Well, I'm sorry we didn't think of a different solution because that tree didn't need to come down. It's the other people on the.
Yeah, we looked at a number of different solutions and landed on this one as the having the greatest cost to benefit ratio. as Owen says, it floods down there all the time when we have storms. If you don't raise the grade of the lot, then you will have water in people's houses, which is a lot more important than cutting down trees. And I think I remember Owen's name looks familiar. I think I was looking at his Twitter quite a bit that week. So he had some great photos of the water in that lot. There were also some questions about, I just want to circle back on the rats. The rats are going to be addressed with the contractor tomorrow morning as well, putting out a pest management, amping up the pest management piece of that. We will also be confirming that there is sufficient fire access to the Dorchester Yacht Club. The pathway is, I think it all depends on where the fence line is, because the existing route, if the existing route had fire access, that we have made no change to that as of yet. There was a question, it was quite a ways back in the chat about the amphitheater seating being a nuisance and whether the park could be closed at night. And no, the park cannot be closed at night. As you can see, there's quite a bit of open area that we would have to control, which we do not have the ability to control. And also the existing condition of neighborhood parking overnight with a resident sticker is going to be replicated in the final plan. So that further limits our ability to close the park and lock the park at night. So I think that's why we will think carefully about the inclusion of those amphitheater seats, understanding that that is not a critical item to the success of this park. So that's something that we will consider moving forward. We do not plan on, so the parking in the lot is currently signed for overnight parking for residents with stickers only. Other than those hours, it's park use for the parking. So that is, so it's not intended to be long-term parking. It should be daily parking to provide some level of relief to the neighborhood, but not strictly not visitor parking, not ticketed visitor parking, but park use during the day. The rock is being moved, and Elise, is it possible to zoom in on that? We are relocating the rock to the plaza. And I think I have lost my track of where I was in the chat. So if there's anybody who would like to unmute themselves and ask a question, that would be fine. So the playground will be, we're going to reopen it as soon as possible, but there are a lot of things that we are realities of building a playground that we are limiting factors. One is the lead time on the play equipment that we're working through our submittal process. We're going to be ordering the equipment very soon. So it'll take some time to receive that. We'll be prepping the site. And then once the playground equipment is installed, the rubber surfacing is weather dependent. So hopefully we can get it installed this fall, but as the weather changes, that is usually usually a limiting factor. So we're just going to have to play that by ear and see how things time out. Brandon, can you speak a little bit to the difference between a universal design playground and an ADA compliant playground?
Sure. So ADA by law, by code, has certain requirements related to providing a number of accessible pieces of equipment. Not every piece of equipment has to be accessible. Not every route within the playground has to be accessible. Universal design playground, which we are putting in here, is every piece of equipment is considered accessible, regardless of the disability, age, etc., as well as the route it takes to move through the playground. So as you might imagine, this is generally a flat playground, all within ADA compliant slopes. And they're able to access, multiple pieces of equipment at any location. You can enter on via ramps, decks, multiple platforms to get to different elevations, use different pieces, turn around, come off. It's not just certain piece of equipment, it's all pieces of equipment that are intended to be used by every person. So I hope that helps clarify it.
Thanks. So ADA is the baseline. We're going above and beyond. That is the takeaway, and that is consistent with the the Challenger field that we're installing. The pathway system provides ADA access to all elements of the park. So that was a very good, very big push for us with knowing how the site is used and would be used in the future. There was a question a while back from Jeannie Doherty, the path from Southview Street into the passive park area, will that be shifting, moving closer to the house that is there now or away from the house? Could you, which house are you, or which pathway are you concerned about?
So when you come in through Southview, at that very corner, there's two houses right there.
Yep.
The pathway that's there has a pretty decent distance away from the houses right now. So the question is that it looks like in the drawings that it's coming closer to the house rather than possibly moving away.
Yeah, I think that is because we're trying to make the ADA path work there.
Correct.
Brandon, can you speak a little bit to that? So that we're trying to keep it as far away as possible, but the grades we're really fighting.
That's their outdoor space. That's our outdoor space that's right there. And they love it. Everybody in the neighborhood loves it. It's an open space. We all kind of sit and hang out there. I was just curious if it was going to be moving closer.
Yeah, that space, that patio is actually in the park. The property boundary is much closer to the building. So that patio is actually mostly in the park. So that's a concern that we have, that is significant encroachment into the park.
I think it's beyond the 10+ years at this point.
Yeah, that has no bearing.
As a former DCR employee,
adverse possession doesn't apply to city.
I know. I understand encroachment. I get it.
Yeah. So that pathway is we're trying to. It may feel a little close, but we're trying to create as much space as we can and still make the accessibility work. There's no other way to get that in there. So thank you for that. Let me scroll back down a little bit. There's quite a few comments in here. Marta asked, how many benches will be at the amphitheater? Will the existing benches stay in front of Southview Street? Too many benches can bring late at night loitering with little enforcement. We have few police. And I don't, could we zoom in maybe on the area, the passive park between Southview and Denny and really take a closer look at that? I think you can zoom in. Yeah, there we go. So I don't think we have any benches up by Southview, but can we talk about what that double line is?
Right there where the cursor is, Kathy?
Yes.
So because that is the accessible route, there's going to be a small granite block wall that is holding the grade on the upper side, so that we're able to grade down and provide the accessible route from that entrance. So that's what that double line is. It's a granite block retaining wall.
That area is also accessible from the end of Bayside Street. However, from either Bayside or Southview, either is resident only or drop off. Yes, and those are primarily, we understand that those are primarily used by residents, and that will that use will continue. There were a couple questions about dog parks, and we did not, the site does not have a dedicated fenced-in dog area, and nor do we condone the use of enclosed ball fields for dog use, because it's not pleasant for children to be running through dog waste. And there are no dogs allowed in enclosed playground areas. So the playground will be signed. The Little League field will probably have a sign on it saying no dogs allowed. But the rest of the area is dogs on leashes are allowed, and we certainly understand that people want to and often bring their dogs on walks here. But I think dog owners need to understand that not everybody is as comfortable with off-leash dogs as they are. So that's just something that is always in tension in every neighborhood in the city. So that is the plan for that. Any plans for wildflowers or natural spaces at the park, not a manicured lawn space? Brandon, do we have any areas that are, yes, we do. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So we are using particularly in between the rectangular field and the Little League field, there's some depressions that will have more wildflower / rain garden plant materials. We are using some low impact design initiatives on this for stormwater. So we'll be doing some, plant wildflower plantings or rain garden plantings that have perennials and flowering plants.
And those are infiltration areas that are more rain garden style, and can tolerate wet feet as the drainage moves through them. Is there a landscape plan for the Southview Street incline? And I think that's where there's a big swath of daylilies. Is there a planting plan for that area?
There is. It's not well represented on this illustrative plan. We can share the proposed planting plan if that makes sense, Kathy.
Okay.
Follow up, I should say. It's a black and white plan for construction.
Not very pretty, but the plan is not very pretty, but the goal is that it does have more ornamental appeal. Elizabeth wanted to clarify that the point was if the area is accessible via Bayside Street, is it necessary to be accessible from Southview? So we are required to have accessible entrances. There are some where it is just not possible. There are some scenarios where it is just not possible to have an accessible entrance. This is not one of them. We are able to make it work in our property, and so we are following that mandate. And as a site that is otherwise very inclusive for children with all abilities, for play with all abilities, that's something that is philosophically consistent. So it's something that we feel strongly about, providing an accessible entrance to all entryways. Can you please explain why the girls' softball field is sharing a space with a multi-use space, but baseball has a designated space? And that is, that's the way that it fits. The Little League field, in order for competition play, an outfield fence is part of that. It doesn't mean that an outfield fence wouldn't be appropriate in a softball field, but we do try to make our spaces as multifunctional as possible. So where we can fit a soccer field overlay with an outfield, we do we do that as regular practice. This is a small soccer field. This is not a high school regulation soccer field. So it would be used by U8 is probably my guess is the max size. So it would not be high school play. It would be high school. This field would be appropriate for high school women's based softball. Excuse me. So I expect it will be permitted more to softball uses, but we have the ability to create a multifunctional space by having that soccer overlay. Just view it as a very large outfield in a couple of corners, and it will feel like that 98% of the time. It will just feel like a big outfield. Can you move the fencing at Southview so that people can go down the steps there? And I assume that means during construction. And unfortunately, that is where the contractor is going to be concentrating his work the next 4 to 6 weeks, is reconstructing that entrance. So in the short period of time that he has prioritized that, that area, it's not possible for us to provide pedestrian access while the construction is ongoing. Not a fan of the extra pavement at the end of Southview. And so that is, I think it will feel a lot greener than the plan looks because of the topography that we're working with. A temporary pedestrian path on Southview would be great. It would also be, there's just not a lot of width there in order to make that work. The soccer season is typically fall, and softball is typically spring, so there's not a lot of overlap. There may be some fall ball for women's softball, and I would not use the COVID year as any kind of template moving forward as to when the fields would be. So yes, in 4 to 6 weeks, there should be some pedestrian access from Bayview and Southview streets. That is what the contractor has relayed to us. So I don't have a lot of information about all of the permits throughout all of Dorchester. I'm not a permitting expert, but we will be looking at that. That will be revisited as the fields come back online through our permitting department. So that there is still pedestrian access to the Harbor Walk from Morrissey Boulevard. That is DCR's, the Harbor Walk is DCR. It continues all the way across to Morrissey Boulevard and those lots over off of Morrissey. So that is still access. I understand that that is not convenient for the majority of the Savin Hill neighborhood. I'm saying 4 to 6 weeks from today is when he anticipates completing the paving work there. I'm not sure what, there's some questions about the softball is being glossed over and wanting a premier softball. And I think this field is going to be an excellent women's softball field along with the other softball fields in the neighborhood. So I'm not sure what the issues are. If somebody wants to unmute themselves and speak to that, I'm happy to entertain that.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Kevin Monahan, represent the ADSL girls softball. Long story short, I think Seth Daniels stated well. I mean, you look at this, it's boys, boys, boys. Girls got stiffed at the last one at Garvey Park. It's 100% boys, 0% girls. I look at this park and it's boys focused. Premier Little League field, fenced off, beautiful. Shared infield, and tell it like it is. I mean, when you have that field there, that all-purpose field, there's going to be people there. We have to go kick people out, even though it's not official season. people playing softball there or people playing soccer there or lacrosse. I just think we need a dedicated field. I don't see it as dedicated.
It will not be used for lacrosse. It's not nearly large enough for lacrosse.
But when you put a lacrosse field there, excuse me, you can't stop other people from using it as the cross is going down.
If you have a permit, you have the right to ask other people politely to remove themselves from the field so that you can use the field that you are permitted for. That's
So
what the permit allows you to do.
I understand that, but then there's reality. So the girls are in a position to have to push those people out, but the boys are not.
The difference is pretty subtle, I think, in practice, right? Is the concern that this small soccer field will be used more than I'm not entirely clear. I don't know what the solution that you're looking for is.
What would you do is you would swap the field. So that nice premier field with the fence that's allocated and dedicated would be girls, and swap the other one to the boys.
But the girls' field does not benefit from the boys' field. The Little League field is none of the Little League fields in Dorchester have an outfield fence, which is needed for a regulation game. Girls does not have that limitation. Girls does not require an outfield fence to be an official field. So if that's the case, I mean, I'm happy to put a fence in the middle of the outfield. If the concern is just that you don't want soccer here, that is, I think the use of soccer here, it has been used as soccer, it has been permitted as soccer for practice soccer by Cristo Ray. That's the only league or organization that has used the soccer field in the past because the fields overlapped and you could get a soccer field there, but it's not a large soccer field. It's not large enough for a game. It's not large enough for anything but a practice. And this field is similar. It's not large enough for a game. It's not large enough for high school. It's like a U8 field, a single U8 field.
Yeah, my concern is just it's public use and it invites public use with this competition when the girls go down and play.
So does everything else in the field.
Pardon me?
Our whole park system is public use.
The whole system is what?
The whole park system is public use.
Sure.
You can
Except when you look at that little league field, though, it's not that public when it's fenced off, and it's absolutely dedicated, and there's all types of warning signs. That's clearly a baseball field only. I don't see that in the other field.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I think I missed some comments. Moving the fence on Southview I meant the far end near Morrissey. We're talking about moving the fence 2 feet. We will look at that tomorrow morning. There are bleachers at all of the fields. Elise, can you put your cursor on where each of the bleachers is? There's a bleacher facility along the third base side of the softball field, first base side of the Little League field, and the third base side. And I believe it's on the first base side of the Challenger field as well. Okay, are there any other comments that I think I've missed large portions of the chat, but if there's anything that I have missed, please feel free to unmute yourself and bring them up to my attention.
Hello. Hi, this is David Stickney. I have a question about the grade from the parking lot to Plaisted and along Springdale Street. How will the hill be managed there? Where will the hill actually go up to the parking lot? Will Springdale be lower, or how is that going to work?
So where Plaisted and Denny come into Springdale, Springdale will be lower than the rest of the parking lot. If you can imagine, there's a grade break along the waterside edge and the athletic field edge of the parking lot. So that's the highest point. And then we start to gently slope back towards Springdale in that direction. And then when we get to Springdale, we'll be slightly above Plaisted and Denny, and then we transition down to where we meet Plaisted and Denny and tie back in, if that makes sense.
So
does that, I'm sorry, I'm Virginia Stickney. So does that mean that the houses that are right there at the corners of Plaisted and Springdale and Denny and Springdale are going to be lower than the street or lower than the parking lot?
So we do tie in where we meet their driveways. We are meeting their driveways at the correct grade. Springdale has got a slight pitch to it, much like many roadways, where the park side of Springdale is slightly higher than the residential side. There are portions where parts of just tying back in the grade at the residential side will be slightly higher, but we are within the right of way or the property lines of the park itself.
PK has his hand up, has their hand up.
does that mean, wouldn't that put,
How do I put up my hand?
I have a question.
I'm not sure who was speaking. PK, if you'd like to speak.
Hi, yeah, I just want to address the amphitheater. I really like the neighborhood and the people who are affected by that, because it's going to be an attraction at night. People are going to be partying down there. They run up Bayside, Southview. It's not going to be visible from police driving by. And it's just going to be a hangout at night. And we were tortured last summer. And that's just an invitation for people to have a nice comfy spot to shoot their fireworks and play their loud music. And we're the ones directly affected by it. And it needs to be addressed. And I think we should have the opportunity to be involved in the decision whether it stays or goes, because from what I understand, it was an add-on to the whole project.
I mean, it was a feature that we thought would be would control the erosion on that hillside, and we thought it would be a nice place to be. But we certainly understand the community's perspective that that is an attractive nuisance and is something that should be eliminated from the project.
All right. Well, will there be a discussion that we can be involved in to decide on that?
Discussion that we're hearing that is problematic, and there are concerns about it, and it should be removed. If people feel strongly like that, that is not the case, but it seems like that's the overwhelming feedback that we're getting. And
well, from the people that live near there, sure, the people that live on the other side of Savin Hill aren't affected by it, but we would be directly affected by it, you know?
Right. Those who are directly affected by it, we do, you know, there's no programmatic need for people to sit there, right? Like it's just a nice feature, a feature that we thought would be nice. If that is problematic, we can eliminate it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mesh, I don't think that you have spoken before. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Hi, Mesh Falapilla. I live on Denny. So currently the playground is a source of noise at 2 a.m. in the morning and later. When the swings go and it squeaks, it keeps my husband awake at night. And what is the expected sound level from the playground with all the new equipment going in there?
Yeah, so there is some sensory play equipment, but it is low level, like wind chimes. And if the swings were squeaking, that's certainly something that you can put a 311 request in, and we can see what we can do about that. So that those are a couple of things to keep in mind.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. JM Rick, I think you can unmute yourself.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, going back to the discussion about Southview Street, creating some pedestrian access quickly. I got the impression the conversation was focusing around where the permanent ADA ramp is going to go, you know, the curb cut and the changes there, which is number 18 and 20 Southview Street. But the job site plan does not show the full extent of where the fencing goes. If you follow down number 18 and 19 are at the curve of the road there. If you follow down Southview Street to the end, it gets to, I'm sorry, that is number 18 and 20 at the end of the road. The construction fence currently ties right into the the end of the neighbor's driveway fence for 199 Savin Hill Avenue. So they've blocked off a neighborhood built set of stairs into the hill there, which are commonly used. And it looks like a really simple adjustment. When you go and look at that tomorrow, don't just look at the curve of the road there on South Street. Walk to the end where it ties into the abutter's gate, and you will see that could be easily adjusted to make access to that set of stairs. Would make a difference. It would be appreciated.
Okay, yeah, we will look at that. I saw your chat clarification, and I did note that. I just didn't comment on it. So thank you for that. We will take a look at it.
Okay.
So there was a question about, or a comment about benches and benches with backs specifically. Can we point out where we have site furnishings like that in the plan for those that are aging in place? That is something that we as a department have been working with the age-friendly commission for a few years now, and trying to get details that work well for them. They have requested benches with armrests so that people can get up and down out of benches more easily. And there's a couple other design considerations that they have consulted on some of our plans about. So those are things that we certainly incorporate into our daily work. But Brandon, can we point out where some of the benches?
Sure. Yeah, my colleague Elise is circling some of the areas, but in general, they're along all of the walking paths, and particularly the intent is to be able to provide a variety of walking loops per se throughout the park. All the benches will have backs on them that are along the walking paths with armrests, and some of them have accessible companion pads next to them as well. So we are, as Kathy mentioned, trying to be age friendly and provide accessible routes that are, gently sloped and blend into the topography, so they are requiring handrails or steeper slopes or stairs. There will be those for just convenience access, but just the intent is that you're able to walk through the park and have a gentle stroll. And if you need a break or want to take a break and admire the view, then there will be a bench nearby that allows you to do that.
This chat seems to be slowing down. So if there are any comments that I've missed, please feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand and I can help you unmute yourself if that's easier. I am going to be going through this chat again, and we'll follow up with people that I clearly missed and following up. So can we talk about where the lighting is in the park?
Sure. So majority of the lighting is centered around the sports fields. There will be the DCR lighting along the Harbor Walk, but there won't be any lighting elsewhere within the park. So there will be, I shouldn't say that, there will be lighting on some of the backside of the sports lighting that will help light the main pedestrian corridors. But some of the pathways that are closer to residences won't be lit, just out of the intent of not using lighting within those areas.
And there is also parking lot lighting and street lighting on Springdale Street.
That's correct. I did miss that. I apologize.
And public drinking fountains. We are putting in a couple of bottle fillers. Can we highlight where those are going to be?
Down by the Little League field, softball field.
Yeah. Can we bring up the slide where the temporary pedestrian access is being? I think that's the slide just before this one. So that temporary access to the Harbor Walk from Denny Street is there. And from that red arrow over is going to be the red arrow, and to the right is going to be the area that is going to be prioritized by the contractor to get that accessible route, a safe and accessible route built as soon as possible. Look for it in 4 to 6 weeks. Noreen, you should be able to unmute yourself, or you are unmuted, so go ahead and speak.
You had mentioned when you were speaking about the softball team that there could possibly be a fence for the softball field. That would be really awesome for the girls. Is that something that is really possible and could happen?
I mean, anything's possible. It would completely eliminate the ability to play soccer here, which includes Cristo Ray and the Martin Richard Foundation. Ryan reminded me in the chat that they are also a permit holder, and they are, primarily elementary school age soccer program and inclusive. So that is something that if we put a fence up there, that would completely eliminate their ability to use this for soccer. Which they have in the past. And we are always trying to create as functional, multifunctional spaces as we can. So somewhere where we can expand, we can fit a small soccer field, we can expand the outfield in the softball field outfield a bit to create a reasonably sized soccer field. That's something that we do.
And then I think to Kevin's point is that, the boys don't have to share their field and the boys get a fence, but then the girls are losing out and they don't get a fence and they have to share their field.
It's a multifunctional space.
Correct, but the boys' field is not then.
Correct.
Correct. The boys' field is just dedicated to boys baseball.
I mean, girls play Little League as well. It's a co-ed program.
But no girl will play on this large baseball diamond.
It's a 60 foot base path. It's not men's baseball.
Oh, I understand that, but I don't think there are any. There are very, very few, if any, girls that play in that age bracket in Dorchester baseball.
That is not the case for every league, and that may change in the future.
But the girls having a softball diamond with a fence will never change either, because once you put it there, we're not going to ever get it either.
I would not say never. I would not say never.
Well, once this field is done, it's done, right?
There can be minor tweaks. I mean, I would consider an outfield fence to be a minor tweak to a field that would completely eliminate the ability to play soccer there, which would severely impact existing soccer programs.
Okay, but my only point, I guess, is that I love everybody to play every sport, right? But it's the girls that are losing out, not the boys in this situation, because the girls have to share their field with the soccer program, which I have no problem with. But the boys get a dedicated baseball diamond with a fence. And yes, maybe girls can play baseball, but there are not very many that do.
We're trying to create as multifunctional spaces. We only have so much land in the city for parkland, and the parks that can accommodate major sports facilities like this are in the minority of facilities that we have. So we try to create multifunctional spaces wherever we can, and we manage it through permits. And this is not going to be a high demand soccer field because of the size of it. It is going to be occasional soccer field. I think the majority of the permit time will be provided to girls softball, simply because there is demand for soccer, but it is not the overwhelming demand for this size of soccer field.
But I think you're kind of missing my point. My point is not about sharing the field. My point is about, like, the boys get a state-of-the-art field with a fence and turf and all that kind of stuff. And they already got that. Well, they don't have a fence at Garvey, but they already got that at Garvey.
Garvey is a men's baseball field. It is not Little League.
But
those are totally different. Men's baseball is a 90-foot base path, and Little League is a 60-foot base path. You cannot overlap those uses. They are completely separate.
Okay, but so the boys here have their own dedicated field with a fence, and the girls still do not have anything like that.
There are other fields in Dorchester. There are other softball fields in Dorchester. I don't have a list in front of me, but I can provide you with that
turf and that have a fence. I don't know of any.
This is not natural. This is not artificial turf. This is natural turf. This is not artificial. So,
and then have a fence.
There is. I know that if you're looking specifically for artificial turf, Roberts has artificial turf. That is a artificial turf field in Dorchester that is women's, can be played by women. It does not have an outfield fence because it overlaps with soccer and football. But that is an artificial turf field in Dorchester. There's also 2 fields at Hemingway. There are also, and there are more.
I'm aware of that. I was asking about the fence.
I can find which ones have fences for you.
Sure.
Yep. Okay. Elaine, you have your hand raised. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay. I know you're saying there's plenty of softball fields in Dorchester. There are many fields in Dorchester. There are not many softball fields because there is a mound. When there is a mound in the field, that is not considered a softball field because it's very dangerous to be playing softball when you have a mound in the infield. So the only one that I know of that does not have a mound is Chewy Park. So that's the only field we have with over close to 300 girls in softball. And expanding to be able to actually play on a softball field. I've lived here for 60 years and have played softball here and have never had a softball field for girls. Girls have been left behind for my 60 years. And I hope it doesn't happen to my grandchildren, because it happened to myself and my children. Now I hope my grandchildren don't have to go through that. I think you ought to look at Title IX again. And girls are being second-class citizens here. Thank you.
Thank you. I will also research the fields in Dorchester that do not have a mound and provide that to Noreen and Elaine. There are not going to be restroom facilities, but we are providing an enclosure over near the, thank you, Elise, over near the Challenger Field that porta potties can go into so that they are not tipped over. So that is an enclosure. It can be a space that is that leagues can bring in porta potties to the site that they can rent at their cost, and we encourage them to lock it so that it is not used by everyone who comes to the park. So that is something that, you know, we recognize that having a facility to use when you are trying to spend a day at the park is a limitation, but we are not able to provide a safe bathroom facility given our current staffing levels. We have 330 sites and just over 200 staff members, so we can't even be at every park, you know, assign one parks person to every facility that we have. So because we're not able to provide that as provide a safe space, this is kind of the workaround that we have come to in order to get that, provide some level of facilities for youth leagues and other leagues. There's some more conversation about Garvey. The playground, Brandon, can you speak to the size of the playground versus the existing playground?
Sure. We are actually, I believe we're slightly larger than the current playground. I don't have the exact square footage, but we're slightly larger, if not equal to the existing playground.
So I think that, are there any other comments that people would like to make? I see some of the comments about Title IX, and I will do some more research about that. I have some suspicions about the park's role and Title IX that I'm not going to share right now because I don't want to speak. This is my I think Jeff may be more versed on this. I think it's more of a program-based requirement and not a facility-based requirement. So I think applying that as a requirement to the site is not an appropriate use, but I will do more research about that. JM, Rick, you have your hand up. You could unmute yourself.
Yeah, this is actually Kathleen, but we're sharing the same computer. So I'm just concerned that there won't be safe pedestrian walkway to the beach park area for another 4 to 6 weeks, because it feels really dangerous. Cars go both ways there. It's very narrow. And I would really like to see what can be done before that, just to find a way for safe access. I really think somebody's going to get hurt.
Yeah, so we will talk to the contractor about that tomorrow morning. And the other, I know there were some concerns about potholes, and I've asked the contractor to fill the potholes as well. So that should help some. It's not, I think it's more of a width, so it may just be a, how can we differentiate the vehicular from the pedestrian?
Yeah, that would be super helpful. The other thing is, I'm just wondering when we will hear the results of your conversation with the contractor. And
oh, I think you may have muted yourself. the sound cut out a little bit. Oh, maybe it's a connection issue. So to follow up, so I understand that there were a lot of issues. There have been a lot of issues raised tonight that require some follow-up, and I will be following up with that. I think in the future, I will be sending out email blasts and posting updates on our website so that I can communicate when things are opening up and how the site is changing, because the site will be changing throughout construction. So I think that will be forthcoming. And I think I will have an update in the near future, in the next week or two, about how to create safe pedestrian access through to the beach area in the short term. So that so be expecting that in the next couple of weeks. And when we're going to be taking down the fence in the on the east side, between near Bayside and Southview, I will send out a notification that is changing. And if we are changing access to the yacht club, that will also, I will send out an update about that.
Would you consider more public meetings? Actually, I just saw this in the chat, because I think a live discussion is helpful. And I don't know who all is on your mailing list either.
So I will, if you have left a valid email address when you signed in today, that will all be captured, and I will double check that all of those are on my mailing list. So if you were part of tonight's part of tonight's discussion and you left a real email address, I will follow that up. If you chose not to leave a real email address, send me an email at kathy.baker-eclipse@boston.gov, or go to the City of Boston website, boston.gov. I usually search for McConnell. So that, and my contact is on that webpage as well. So you can contact me through that. I am clearly working from home in my daughter's room, but my office phone gets forwarded to my cell phone. So I do get all of that information. So I understand that there is some discussion is valuable, but there are certain things that at this point we're not going to be able to change in the design, and I just don't want to provide any kind of assurance that major items are up for discussion. So this is more of a briefing than opening up community really revisiting the design. So so those are just a couple of things. So we can revisit that, but I think one way dissemination of information so that you're all getting good information. I think that's another thing. I have a little spy on the Facebook page, and I just want to make sure that people are getting good information from the city and not perpetuating impressions or feelings. So so that will hopefully clarify that direction. So there was one more question. The area or comment, the area is passive near Bayside Street entrance, and it should stay that way. Move the benches away from residential homes, and I think that's something that we can accommodate. And we will think about other creative ways that we can stabilize that slope instead of the amphitheater. So I think those are a couple of things, really good things that we are hearing that are relatively minor in scope change, that are easy for us to accommodate at this point. So I think that maybe I will let people have one more chance to raise their hand and unmute themselves. Any final comments before we get go? We've been here for a couple of hours, and I do want to thank you all for your time. I know that this park is really important to so many people and is part of their daily lives, and we're hoping that these changes are hard in the short term, but are going to make a real positive impact for all the neighbors, especially ones that are next to the park for many, many years to come. So If there's anything else that we need to, that needs to be said, so keep an eye out for an email from me about how we're addressing some of the immediate safety needs in the very near future. And again, my email address is Kathy with a C .baker-eclipse@boston.gov. So I could drop it in the chat if anybody's still in there. That is maybe the easiest way to get that out. So thank you all for your time, your comments, your passion. I really appreciate all these thoughts.
Thank you, Kathy. Good job tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
And maybe we can circle back in a month or two and we'll get something like this together again, unless we go in front of Columbia Savin Hill.
Yeah, and we have been continually providing some updates to the neighborhood association that way. And I think I will probably see you tomorrow as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.